Welcome to the Midlands Climate Conversations. I'm your host, Tariro Leti Maderera. And today, as we commemorate Women's Month, we have a special guest, and we'll be talking about women and the intersection with climate change. A special mention to our sponsor today, which is the Milan Family Restaurant. If you haven't been there, you definitely have to. And today we're going to be talking about a very crucial issue since it is Women's Month, and actually happy belated Women's Day to all the women out there. So this is my guest for today. Her name is Yeukai Munetsi. She is a media and communications expert. She is working at Nkabazwe Community Radio Station, and she is a climate activist. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, as you have mentioned, I wear so many jackets, but my interests lately have been towards climate change, the just energy transition, mining, women's rights, and all of that.
Why? Why are you so interested in those issues?
So I saw that climate change is very topical,
Yes.
but somehow our communities, especially women, miss it because it doesn't contextualize, like it's not relating to them. It's those theories, what is climate change effects, but they do not know what we are talking about. So I'm interested, or I got interested because I saw a gap there that I can actually get in deep.
What have you found so far?
I have seen that the just energy transition is not just at all for the marginalized communities, especially women and youth. It's not just at all because they are doing the hard work and yet they are not recognized. Like at the top of the bar, there are only those rich elites and women and youth who play a pivotal role in this just energy transition are being left behind.
You talked about the just transition. What is it actually about?
So in my own words, a just energy transition is where we realize that climate change is real. Climate change effects are real. So in doing so, we are now trying to promote cleaner sources of energy, talk about solar, talk about the rush of lithium in Bikita, talk about, all these resources that we have that will promote, a greener economy. So when we are saying just, we mean that it is equal. The way we are going to harvest lithium in Bikita is going to benefit the people with the resources as well as those investors. But now, it's not.
Is it actually just?
No, it's not just because.
How?
Because I have witnessed in Lower Gweru, women are facing, those severe challenges with this, transition as communities. Young people have now resorted to mining, brick making, because now climate change effects, they are being affected by drought. And as such, young people have decided to go for mining. And as such, women on the other side are now feeling, the devastating results. We go to Bikita, we're talking about lithium. We talk about lithium, and we have had cases where lithium was being looted. Yet if you go there, Bikita is the poorest, community. We go to Churumanzo. There are a lot of communities in Churumanzo district that are into chrome mining, others are into gold. These resources are not being treated the way they are supposed to, benefiting the communities. Talk about education, talk about access to health, talk about clean sources of water. There's nothing like that. These resources are causing more harm than they are supposed to cause good in communities.
So what have you observed as a journalist and as a community worker? What have you seen in the community?
The moment we say climate change, women don't understand the thing. Remember in my introduction, I said something about not contextualizing the concept. Women are not aware. I've communicated with women from Gweru, and I've had conversations, facilitated some of the conversations on climate change. The moment you say that topic, they don't know because they can't relate. But the moment you start saying, now, these water challenges we're facing as Gweru, that's climate change effects, They start now, opening up and saying a lot more because the moment you say climate change, they're like, what is this animal? So I feel like this knowledge gap and contextualization of, what climate change really means as a woman, that's something.
And women are the most affected by the climate change issues. So let's look at it from the perspective of health. How has climate change actually affected women's health?
So because women are not fully aware what climate change effects are, they are not even aware what they're going through might be an end result of climate change. Because we are now talking of a community that used to, a woman who used to walk 2 kilometers to get water. Now mining has come in place, and it has like made it difficult for that same person to go and get water from the nearest bowl. What do? They are now walking long distances, and this in the long run causes them, carrying a 20-liter bucket in your head. Some are using wheelbarrows. That causes a lot of, body damage, our spine, a lot of harm, Talk about the child that they've left behind. That child is also compromised in terms of someone feeding them. It's something that goes again back to health. Let's talk about women being in the middle of those Bikita, mining communities, them breathing all that heavy dust and everything. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how, there's this story in Bikita where there is a dump site near the main river. I don't remember the name of the river, but look at the harm that it is going to cause to women, because they are the ones who are going to be using that water mostly, for home use and everything.
Let's also look at it from SRHR issues. You've got women that are vulnerable in these communities. Is climate change also increasing their vulnerability?
So the rush of the just energy transition, cleaner energy resources has impacted heavily on communities. Let's go to Mahamara in Lalapansi, where we have a whole entity, a whole investor mining there, with cabins for workers and everything. There is nothing speaking of women. Let's talk about health. When I interviewed some of the women, they actually give birth in the small, I can't call them shelters or houses. They're just, I don't know, it's a dilapidated, area, and it's very sad. They give birth inside their little homes. They help each other give birth. I also talked around SRHR, the question that you have asked me. They said issues of access to, family planning methods. The hospital is very far, and for them it's like, why should we walk 42 kilometers to gain that?
42 kilometers.
42 kilometers. HIV pandemic, all those that are affected by HIV, they're saying that they don't even bother themselves anymore going to take their monthly supplies because it's very far. So what is happening there is very chaotic. People are just,
doing whatever they can to survive.
So it's very chaotic.
So we can see that climate change is really affecting a lot of things. It's intersectional with a lot of societal issues. So what can women do? What can be done to actually help the situation? The UN Women talked about how women should be at the forefront of climate issues and advocating for justice. So, in your own opinion, what should women do? What can women do?
All right. Before I answer that, I forgot a very important why I had said the just energy transition is just. It's just exploiting women and girl children. Look at how these mining or resource-rich communities have turned our young girl child into sex workers. Look at how women have resorted to fast money. It's just transactional. They don't care about tomorrow. They don't even think about vending and everything. They are all now in a hub where they do sex transactions, and that's not the communities we want. There is nothing just about that. So what can women do? I think this is not necessarily what women can do, what we as communities can do,
Yes.
I know women need to empower themselves by, getting access or knowledge on what climate change is. But now I'm talking about a woman in Churumans. I'm now giving her the burden that she can never, because their only source of access to information is through radio, because that's the most cheapest one and the most common one. So I think we, you and me, those with resources as well, should actually go there in the communities. Do not foreignize the context. Tell them, climate change effects means that there is a drought. This river that you once knew, there is Sebakwe River, along Chivu there.
Yes.
Tell them about that. They understand it that way. Tell them that this river was once full and it used to do A, B, C. And climate change effects is what has caused this river to dry up. And this is now manifesting in A, B, C, D. In that way, we will see women coming in the forefront, trying to proffer solutions that actually benefit them. But the moment you take your book and say, UN Women, EU, they don't understand, contextualize, those mushrooms that you love, those natural vegetables that you love, those, madora, those insects and bugs that we eat as Zimbabweans.
Yes.
Tell them about that and, they will start coming in. But the moment that you tell them climate change, the impacts, they're like, what?
From a Western perspective.
Yeah, so let's Africanize. In fact, let's Zimbabweanize climate change. Yeah.
So how has been your work as a journalist trying to get information in these communities?
All right. So as a woman journalist, this is the Women's Month, I have noted how women, when we're in tertiary institutions, young women are the highest, they have the highest numbers. And as we move to the industry, there are no young women. Why? Because I have personally experienced, the tight security, we encounter when we're in the grassroots, when we wear our jackets and we say, I have the right to access information. There is a friction that is not talked about. The environment is not safe. Some threats are not spoken about, they are not oral. You just sense that this is a threat. The moment I try to go to a community in Mahamar and talk about climate change, I have brushed shoulders with a political entity and it becomes very, unsafe. So I'm saying that some of the threats are not spoken about, like they're not vocal, like no one will come and have a machete on your head. You just sense that this is a threat. The other threat is me approaching those communities, because some of these artisanal miners would have ran away from various crimes, So the moment I step in, they can easily notice this is a foreign person and I'm also a threat to them. And by doing so, I'm already under threat because they don't trust me, they don't know why. Talk about risk transfer. There are communities that I have interviewed and people, especially women, have suffered the consequences of interacting with a journalist because talk about risk transfer, and that on its own means I can't get information anymore, because the moment I go back to that community anymore, no one wants to associate with me. Because let's talk about how women have in some instances faced, food aid deprivation because I have interviewed them, so there's a whole lot of unspoken danger that's out there when I'm trying to access information as a female journalist.
Yeukai, it was very informative. I learned a lot today.
You're welcome, you're welcome. I hope young women out there and women, since we're in the month of women, feminism, I hope they've gathered one or two things that they can use in their advocacy work in their communities.
So from the Midlands Climate Conversations team, until next week, as we always say, no one knows about it until we talk about it.